Top 10 reasons to move to Alaska. Just a little intro before we go to the list. Alaska is a US state on the northwest extremity of the country's west coast, just across the Bering Strait. It borders the Canadian province of British Columbia and the territory of Yukon to the east and the southeast, and has a maritime border with Russia's Chukotka Autonomous Okrug to the west. To the north are the Chukchi and Beaufort Seas of the Arctic Ocean, while the Pacific Ocean lies to the south and the southwest. Alaska is the largest US state by area, being 3 times bigger than California. Alaska's largest city is Anchorage and its state capital is Juneau. Alaska has a population just over 710,000. Let's begin. Number 10. The biggest state. Alaska is the biggest state, and it's not Texas. Texans always brag as though they are the biggest state, but they are not. Alaskans sometimes get annoyed with Texans cause they know Texans will always act up and say the wrong things about Texas being the biggest state. But sometimes you have to let the Texans be who they are, but not in Alaskan soil you don't. Alaska is huge. A lot of the land is owned by the Federal Reserve. That is 65% of Alaska is owned and managed by the US federal government as public lands. That includes the multitude of national forests, national parks and national wildlife refuges. But there is still a lot of space available and land prices are relatively cheaper than mainland America. The climate is a little different though, and it takes some time to get used to, especially in the winter months. Number 9. The environment. Alaska is wild. It has more than 3 million lakes, marshlands and wetland permafrost that covers over 188,000 square miles. That is mostly the northern, western and southwest flatlands. It has glacier ice that covers over 28,000 square miles of Alaska. The Bering Glacier is the largest glacier in North America, covering over 2,000 square miles alone. The climate in southeast Alaska is a mid-latitude oceanic climate in the south sections and a subarctic oceanic climate in the northern parts. On an annual basis, the southeast is both the wettest and the warmest part of Alaska, with milder temperatures in the winter, and it has a high rainfall throughout the year. Alaska is the least densely populated state and one of the most sparsely populated areas in the world at 1.2 inhabitants per square mile, with the next state being Wyoming at 5.8 inhabitants per square mile. Alaska is by far the largest US state by area and the 10th wealthiest per capita income. Number 8. Freedom. If you want to be a caveman, then this is it. You can finally be a caveman or a woman and live happily ever after. Freedom does not come free. Here in Alaska, you can finally get away from the liberals and the screaming woke gang. If you're a liberal though, then this is a state where it may not be for you if you don't agree with their ways of life. On the other hand, Alaska has the lowest individual tax burden in the United States. It is one of the 5 states with no sales tax and one of the 7 states with no individual income tax. Don't get too excited just yet. While Alaska has no sales tax, municipalities collect a local sales tax from 1 to 7.5%, most charge between 3 to 5%. Number 7. Indigenous population. You might be thinking, how on earth does the indigenous population benefit you? Actually, it does. Every place has a spirit, and in Alaska, the indigenous population gives its charm to making it a worthwhile state to live in. Some things you should know: that the indigenous population of Alaska is proportionally the highest of any US state at over 15%, close to 24 native languages spoken, and make sure you take into account Alaskan natives exercise considerable influence in local and state politics. You better be a good listener for the first time, or else things will go wrong. A total of 5.2% of Alaskans speak one of the state's 20 indigenous languages known locally as native languages. Alaska recognizes 20 indigenous languages to have official status, however English is widely spoken. Good for you. Many established music festivals including the Alaska Folk Festival, the Fairbanks Summer Arts Festival, the Anchorage Folk Festival, the Athabascan Old Time Fiddling Festival, the Sitka Jazz Festival and the Sitka Summer Music Festival, the Anchorage Symphony Orchestra and the Fairbanks Symphony, etc., etc., etc. Number 6. The places. When it comes to being independent and being more resourceful, you can't get more wilder than Alaska. This is the place where you will be tested to the limit unless you live in one of those big towns. And there are only one or two, and the rest of the places are different. It just depends where you live and how remote are the surroundings. Ideally, you would want to live somewhere that you get good summers and mild winters. Avoid the Arctic areas. I don't think any of you would live somewhere up north, but in the big towns that have under 40,000 population, such as Juneau, is good, which is expensive though. Sitka is another expensive place. Cost of living is generally high and there's hardly anything to buy. Weather is boring as hell. And there is Ketchikan, where you get bad weather most of the year. Bad weather meaning it rains a lot and everything is expensive. Juneau averages over 50 inches of rain a year and Ketchikan averages over 150 inches. This is also the only region in Alaska in which the average daytime high temperature is above freezing during the winter months. Fairbanks gets a little too cold, but it is the second largest city by population. It has jobs, but it's not as exciting as the other places, but you get more bang for your buck. Number 5. Wildlife. There are lots of animals such as the bear. Bears are pretty scary. You have to like being with wild animals. Animals do attack when you get scared or hungry. Always be armed when you go out in the wild and don't be afraid to use a gun, as this will save your life. You got to remember you will be traveling either by your own transport, that is by your car, or you have to walk to places. There aren't any good public transport. Some places don't even have roads. And some of the roads haven't been repaired for a long time. Number 4. You get paid to live there. Yes, you get paid to live there. Between $1,000 to $2,000, but this amount changes every year. However, there are not many conditions. The only conditions are that Alaska has to be your permanent state of residence. That is, you have to live in the state for at least 180 days per year and have not committed a crime within that year. You may be wondering why you get that. It is because Alaska brings billions and billions of dollars of revenue to mainland America, and there are just a few people that live in Alaska. However, I think people deserve better. They should get a better deal. It is goddamn freezing up there. Number 3. Loner. It is hard to get laid in Alaska. There are few women. Unless you're into men, you better keep a low profile, or else if the town finds out, they won't be too happy. There are more males than females and people tend to get a bit lonely there. On the other hand, if you do not like interacting with people, then you will be fine. Know that human beings need some connection as we are social animals. Do consider the human element before moving to Alaska. Number 2. Hunting. Another reason to be a caveman. Hunting is great. These days people don't hunt with bows and arrows. Unless you're a native, then carry on with your tradition. People love their guns. They tend to shoot a lot of animals. If you're a bit of a cracker, then this is one of the states where a lot of the runaway criminals tend to gather. It's wild up there. Fruits and veg have to travel from mainland America and it gets a bit old before making on your plate. This also depends on where you live. The bigger towns tend to get a good stock of fruits and veg. However, you won't be able to get a wide variety of fruits and veg. Do consider that before you move. Number 1. Los Anchorage. I saved the best till last. Los Anchorage. It has a ring to it, like Los Angeles. Not quite though. It doesn't live up to the brand Los Angeles. At least it doesn't have the homeless crisis that is going on in Los Angeles. Los Anchorage has its high crime, but not too high. Los Anchorage is small compared to other cities in the south. If you have kids, then you better be good at homeschooling them, cause Alaska has a problem with brain drain. Many of its young people, including most of the highest academic achievers, leave the state after high school graduation and do not return ever again. For a very, very long time, Alaska did not have a law or a medical school. On the other hand, Los Anchorage has a milder weather than the other big towns of Alaska. It has more people, therefore more jobs, and more restaurants to choose from. However, the food is reviewed as bland most of the times. Alaska is a bittersweet state where there are great things and there are compromises to be made, yet it's a beautiful state to escape mainland America. There we have it, the top 10 reasons you should move to Alaska. Like, comment, and subscribe to the channel, and I will see you in another time.